Hi everyone, I'm Penros776, and I'm sure you already knew that, but here's a question for you. Do you know what year it is? That's right, it's 2022. That is right, isn't it? Yep, it's 2022, it's a new year, and you know what that means? I think it's time I busted out something a little bit special. Introducing Penros, the Defense Doctor. No, I'm not a real doctor. What is it? Well, to give you a bit of background context, I do a lot of Aether defense videos. I'm sure you already knew that too. And a lot of the time, people find me and they ask me, hey, Penros, you want to help me out with my defense? And I love doing that. I love doing that because it kind of implies that I know what I'm doing. I'm not, I'm winging it. I make everything up as I go along. But still, it's absolutely flatters me whenever anyone asks me to do this. I love doing it, and the only problem is that doing this over Discord or over Twitter, or especially Twitter, is kind of a nuisance. It's a bit of a pain. You've got to get me at the right time to even make sure I'm on at all, and even then, I'm limited to what I can do in a Discord message or a Twitter. However many characters it is these days. That's a bit of a pain, so why not use the format that I'm most used to, the video format, where I can do cool animations and have various visual things show up to help explain with, In any case, if you think, oh, that sounds neat, I'd like to hear Penros give me some thoughts on this thing that I need help with on my defense, I'll tell you how to sign up at the end of the video. That's a little trick, you see, to keep you watching all the way until the end. If you skip there, I'll know. It's fine, you can actually skip there, but before that, well, I figure for the first episode, none of you will have signed up yet. Why not explain how I built my own defense? I'm sure some of you are very interested in that as well. So, here it is. My defense team. Lo and behold, you probably recognize this if you've watched my videos. It might be a little different from the last video because I may or may not have made some changes. I honestly do not remember, but here they are. My Cantria Ball team with Picnic Flora, with new female Byleth, with Arden, the new hire. He's strong and tough. You've got to respect that. Ascendant Fjorm, Harmonic Cantria, very silly Mirabilis build. I know you all love my very silly builds. I do too. And Saros. And honestly, let's get straight into it, because step one for me of building any defense team starts right here, right on this screen. This is the defense team button. You need to choose the right units. And basically, at step one, when I'm choosing units, where you start is by considering the units that you're thinking of running into. So I'll generally choose units at this stage thinking of 4 specific problems. Problem 1, what happens if people are going to try and end turn the team? Because that's what basically everyone does, right? The vast majority of people use end turn because it is the easier strategy. You just do it. Problem 2, who do I have to stop duo and harmonic skills being used? Because duo and harmonic skills will ruin your day. Problem 3, how do I deal with ranged units attacking my team? And problem 4, how do I deal with melee units attacking my team? Those last 2 are player phase things. So, starting with problem 1. Problem 1 is the one that you probably are going to dedicate the most effort to, because it is the biggest strategy. And I have 3 units covering problem 1. Legendary Byleth, the female Legendary Byleth, because there's 2 of them. This is going to get confusing real fast. Picnic Flora, and the third one, Harmonic Cantria. you might think, but Harmonic Catchery doesn't really attack anything. She doesn't, but she is a really important support for making sure that these two are actually getting those kills. Because what you need to do, right? And let's split it up a bit further, because there's really 3 types of end turn, because there's 2 types of end turn strategy. There is people trying to omni-tank with just 1 unit who can at least try to tank everything, or there are now people split tanking. They have 1 near tank and 1 far tank. That's enabled by save skills. So, for the omni-tanks, hopefully between getting hit by Picnic Flora and Legendary Byleth, that should kill them. For the split tanks, you might think, well, hang on, Panrost, of those 3 units, Legendary Byleth and Picnic Flora both are ranged. Harmonic Catchery is the only one here who actually hits near save. Were you sure about that? Yeah, I am sure, because when they're split tanking like that, you might feel like it would be a good idea to try and split attack in return, right? See if you can break their near save or their far save. Because, well, they've got 2 units. If you attack both of them, hopefully you'll at least break the weaker one. But I also think that if you break either their near unit or their far unit, then the rest of your team is probably going to have a fine time with whatever units are left over, right? So, instead of trying to hit both the near and the far here, what I've got is I'm doubling up on their far unit and ignoring the near unit, especially since I think at the moment near units are probably quite a bit stronger, quite a bit harder to deal with. That's just my opinion. But in any case, yeah, doubling up on the far are those 3 units. Picnic Flora deals with most of the green threats. Picnic Flora deals with Brave Ike, usually Brave Edelgard, usually Ascendant Fjorm, of course. And then if you look at the other categories of threats, the most common one left over that Picnic Flora doesn't handle reasonably is Brave Hector. Because Brave Hector is, of course, the absolute pain in all of our sides. So, as Picnic Flora's backup, Legendary Byleth is a Windsweep unit. Windsweep, one of the big counters to Brave Hector specifically, and of course being fast, and she's got that guaranteed special, she can hit pretty hard. She's still not the perfect Brave Hector counter. She can leave certain Brave Hector builds alive on a few hit points, but with her and Picnic Flora's current build uses that Legendary Byleth support to get off a immediate iceberg. And, well, putting that together, that immediate iceberg is hopefully enough to then cut through whatever hit points are left once and for all. And, okay, so the other thing, of course, Harmonic Catria, if you can, like, I've gone through a long list of various tanks and said, well, how am I beating these? And these are the 3 units I've got it down to. Harmonic Catria makes this whole process a lot easier, because really it's these 2 units doing most of the work. Harmonic Catria is just doubling their output. If you don't have Harmonic Catria, this step is still possible. It's just a lot more difficult. Because, well, if you compare your unit's offensive outputs with and without Harmonic Catria, it should be pretty obvious, right? And then Harmonic Catria also being here is very useful because she is covering step 2. Step 2 is you need your Geo Hindrance up. You need your Geo Hindrance up because if I just go find some, I don't know, Geo and Harmonic units, you're looking at units like, oh, I don't know, yeah, Harmonic Shida has a free dance. Harmonic Altina has Vantage, which is going to be really tough for you to answer. Joe Leaf has a big stats down and a whole bunch of damage. How are you going to deal with that, right? If all your units have no hit points, what are you going to do? Etc, etc, etc. There are so many units in this game who have duo and harmonic skills that are very strong and that are pretty much going to end the match if they're used properly by your opponent. Duo's hindrance is the only thing stopping that, so you need a duo unit. You can build a team without a duo unit, but I just don't see it getting very far if your opponents have their own duo units and bring them into combat with the idea of using those duo skills to their maximum potential. You can do a bit to kind of counteract it, like if you're worried about Winter Altina, you can run a Hardy Bearing unit, but even that only works so far against Winter Altina. But the best strategy is just having that duo unit and having them be alive. It's a tough one. Obviously, if you've got strong duo units, bring the strongest one. If you don't really have strong duo units, bring whoever you can and try and work them into one of the roles that they can fit into. If you have no duo units, good luck. Well, you might be able to figure something out, but it's a really tough building proposition, honestly, with no duo units. Problem 3. Getting hit by ranged opponents. This is one that's easier with save. I've got Ascendant Fjorm with far save here, and Ascendant Fjorm, my Ascendant Fjorm is running Deflect Magic. Why? Because a decent proportion of the threats I'm expecting to face are magic threats that are specifically hitting twice. Brave Weapon effects or Desperation effects. Of course, the new Winter Lysithia. There's also Ninjorin. Deflect Missile is also tempting because Ninja Lin is a threat. I need to finish building this Ninja Lin. But I weighed it up and I think the Ascendant Fjorm is basically your best answer for a lot of these problems. If you don't have a far save unit, again, there are ways to build around this. Most far attack teams are looking to kill your duo units first because they're relying on, for instance, Ninja Lin and her harmonic extra dance to then get all the actions they need to kill the rest of your team. So if you don't have a fast save unit to protect your entire team, your next best solution is building up your duo unit to try and survive or try and kill on a counterattack that harmonic or whatever ranged attacker is hitting them as soon as possible. That, in fact, was what led to my original Duo Alphonse build. I'll show you a team with Duo Alphonse on it in a while, but before saves existed, Duo Alphonse was my answer to Ninja Lin. The idea being that with his Unity as well, he's the duo unit who at the time could stack defense high enough to actually stand a half-decent chance of surviving. Now, of course, things are a little different. I use saves. And then lastly, melee range threats. This is what Arden is for. Your melee range threats normally, again, saves make this problem easier, but the thing I consider is that there are a few specific save units that you're generally looking at for this. Arden I've picked because he's got a lot of hit points, and because of his weapon, his dual phase Brave Weapon. One of the things with melee threats, right, specifically, the melee threats you're looking at most often are, well, there's two. there's Regin and there's Brave Erica. Those are the biggest ones. Harmonic Sheeta is also one to worry about. If you can deal with her as well, that's great. I don't see as many Harmonic Sheetas as I do Regins and Ericas, because Regin and Erica were given out for free to a lot of people. And then they have Kanto, which people can use to chip units off your team and then run away. Right? That's why those are the biggest melee threats. And, well, I've built this Arden again to deal with those specific threats. Svalin Shield is the anti-Erica tool. Erica has armor effective damage. Any armor that does not neutralize that armor effective damage somehow is at huge risk of just being one-shot by a suitably built Erica. The anti-Regin piece of kit here is Mystic Boost, free. Mystic Boost, Regin's biggest threat to Arden, like if Regin didn't have Saver Shell, Regin really struggles against this guy. He has a lot of defense and a lot of hit points. But Saver Shell targets the lowest of defense and res. His res stat is non-existent. So, Mystic Boost here is counteracting that. It's in the B slot, because the third piece of the puzzle here is Steady Breath. Steady Breath combined with Ignis, combined as well with Legendary Byleth support, and then the final piece of the puzzle combined with Arden's Blade, that dual phase Brave weapon. Because here's the other problem with Brave Erica. She has a huge special proc if she gets it off. If she hits you with Luna, especially, which she will guaranteed get on her second hit because there's nothing you can really do about that, if she hits you with Luna, your unit is dead. And there's no real way to avoid this except for a couple ways. One of them is having massive damage reduction, because she currently has nothing against damage reduction. If you've got huge damage reduction on your second hit, you can survive Brave Erica. So Brave Edelgard, I like for this. Option 2 is kill her. But she is fairly tanky, not massively tanky. Her HP and defense stats aren't the biggest, but she does have 30% damage reduction. The best way to kill her is with a big special. So, to achieve this, the units I really look at for beating Brave Erica, especially considering that you're running Svalin Shield, right? You're losing out on some A-slot stats, you really need that special to kill. The units that kill a Brave Erica are usually ones with slaying effects, so you can get an instant bonfire, or in this case, this Brave Weapon effect is giving me an instant Ignis. Those are the two units that I tend to look at, that I tend to think of running. So again, Arden works really well, Brave Edelgard works really well, Brave Hector has both of those effects in his weapons, so you can build him certain ways to try and succeed. Theoretically, you could also run units like Amelia. There's plenty of options out here. That's, again, what you can do for near save. But again, you might not have save units. So the other thing you can do, well, when it came to distant being attacked from, your main concern is your duo unit, right? When it comes to near being attacked from, there's probably better ways of phrasing that. Now the big thing to worry about is your front line. If I go back to my actual team here, these units at the back can be whatever for the sake of being attacked by close threats, because a close threat can't get to them. There are units in the way. It is just the units you have exposed that you need to worry about for close threats. In fact, Mirabilis here is a good example. She's not in Arden's range, so I had to build her with a surviving close threats build as well, just so that she couldn't easily be picked off. So yeah, depending on how your team is built, if you have near save, you can basically use that one unit to consider all the potential close threats. If you don't have near save, you might have to build multiple units with the idea of surviving those close threats, although it is admittedly a bit easier if your frontline units aren't armors, because then they don't have to worry about Brave Erica's armor effectiveness. And once you've dealt with Brave Erica and again, you might also consider some other close range threats as well. There's plenty of them out there. Those are just the two that you see all the time. Build around the ones you're expecting to see first, right? You may notice some of the units on this team don't really fall into any of those categories, and that's fine. When you come up with your list of units that you're using to answer every threat that's out there, like you've listed all the tanks, and you've got a list of 2 or 3 units that kill all those tanks, you've listed all the... well, you've got a duo unit in there somewhere, and you've got your far range protection and your near range protection, you're probably going to have 1 or 2 slots left over, and that's generally good, because that means that those last slots you can use for utility of some kind. In this case, multiple layers of utility. I've got dancers, and I've got a rally unit for a rally trap, and also they're both mythics. Having mythics on your team is great. If you can make mythics do other jobs, like, for instance, killing certain meta threats, or surviving, tanking certain meta threats, or... well, in this case, they're still utility, that's great. They've got other utilities, both they're not just single purpose being a mythic, and that's great, but even if their job is just being a mythic, they're giving you 5 hit points of tankiness, certain stats, and lift loss reduction. That's still pretty good. So any extra slots, consider filling them with mythics or whatever utility you've got. So now we've worked out what units we're using, but there's still a few things to consider. First things first, don't lock the units in yet, because when you go into positioning, you might suddenly think, oh, I want to switch these units around. But speaking of which, it's time for positioning. A couple big concepts that I like to use when it comes to positioning. Concept 1 is overlap. Overlap relates back to that idea we had to begin with of covering all the different types of tank threats. Sure, we've got units that can kill any one of those tanks that we're expecting to see coming into our zone, but there's one thing we need to make sure of. We need to make sure that if someone tries to tank, that one of our units, or if it requires a combination of units, like if it's a very strong Brave Hector, for instance, who needs a hit from Legendary Byleth and a hit from Picnic Flora, we need to be relatively certain that both of those hits are going to happen, so that that kill happens. So we do not want there to be a tile anywhere where you can sit and not get hit by the unit that is supposed to kill you. That's the principle of overlap. And so the engine I use for overlap is a rally trap. You can do it several ways. Like if I go to my test setup, where is it here? Like for instance, you can do overlap by staggering ranges, right? Like if, ignore Melnus for the moment, if Seiros is here and Gangrel, we want to overlap Gangrel with Seiros, we just step Gangrel behind Seiros, or we can use, I don't know, something like this again, and actually we can stick Melnus in here. Now every tile that Sophis can hit, who I've been calling Seiros because I'm an idiot, she is Sophis, she's not Seiros, big difference. Every tile that Sophis can hit, Gangrel can also hit, Melnus can also hit, right? That's overlap. Admittedly, this setup here has a bit of a problem because these tiles over this side of the map, right? You can try and tank Merlinus from them. Sophis, Gangrel can't reach them. So, you also need to consider that sort of thing when you're building your overlap, right? You basically look over every tile on this map and think, well, how are my units that kill things going to get there? Anyway, back to our defense. The way we achieve that is one, using Harmonic Catria and her weapon that grants ground orders, or well, just orders, I guess, because it grants its flying units as well. And two, using this rally trap here. Seiros rallies Legendary Byleth because Legendary Byleth has the biggest range. Well, that's not actually the reason. If you want help with rally traps, I can explain the actual AI logic for them. But basically, Seiros is going to rally a unit who's attacking. Seiros can only really reach Legendary Byleth, and Seiros can only reach Legendary Byleth from the defense tile here. So that's where Seiros goes. And at that point, every tile that Legendary Byleth can reach is reached by being adjacent to that tile Seiros is standing on. Picnic Flora is affected by orders, so Picnic Flora can orders to any of those tiles. Thus, we have achieved complete overlap of those two units once the rally goes off. Also, Mirabilis comes forward to rally, which also gives us a bit of extra reach as well. Not rally, dance. But that's something to worry about later. That's the basic principle of the rally trap, right? And this has one other neat feature, which is that it also overlaps Seiros with those units as well. From this tile here, Seiros can now hit everything that Legendary Byleth can hit. That's pretty nice. And again, I'm using Harmonic Catria here. You don't have to use Harmonic Catria for overlap either. I showed you how to do it with Gangrel and Merlinus. I'll find another team in my old team's backlog that uses the same idea. Yeah, here is an older team back from before even the 7th unit slot existed, and it uses the same concept. This time, Orders is on Mirabilis, and Flane also has aerobatics, because of course Orders isn't affecting her, it's ground orders. Eliwood's our rally unit this time. Eliwood rallies Duo Alphonse from the front. Pink Flora can orders to him, and Flane can aerobatics to him, and between those two, you've got basically the exact same thing as before, where you now have that perfect overlap. Eliwood also gets danced, so he, in addition, is hitting all of those squares, and actually can go a bit further as well. He can go all the way down here and cause problems. Like, if your units can go further than your overlap range, that's great. You just don't want that to create tiles where there is no overlap. So, like, Eliwood can hit down here. Due to orders, Alphonse can also hit down here. Actually, he doesn't even need orders, he can just walk there, right? That's the idea. There isn't really a tile where any enemy can stand and dodge getting hit by Alphonse, and because they can't dodge getting hit by Alphonse, they can't dodge getting hit by any of our other units because they all overlap with Alphonse. Next concept, threat. So, threat basically, if we just go into test defenses for a second, threat, the idea behind threat is how much of the map can your units hit. Yes. And if we break some tiles here, danger area is turned on, so it's really obvious to see threat. It's this area. This big red area is our threat. And maintaining a big threat range is important. It's important because if I wanted to attack this team at the start of turn, if I don't want the team to hit me, I have to be outside that threat range.
I won't lose.
So, for instance, here, Legendary Byleth has this 1, 2, 3, 4 tile threat. That is longer than the reach of a melee cavalry unit. So, in order for a melee cavalry unit to hit our team, they have to start inside our threat range. And admittedly, getting one tile into your threat range isn't so hard. You can just smite in, right? But you're still making it harder than it was before. If this threat range was one tile shorter, for instance, Regan could have just sat on this tile here and then attacked next turn, right? And then the enemy team would have had one more action with which to attack us, which could theoretically snowball into something else down the line. The biggest threat range, of course, you can have is on a ranged cav. Well, technically you can get slightly bigger than that as well. You can get a ranged cav with movement buffs. I don't know how you're getting that. But the biggest practical threat range is ranged cav, which will hit all the way down to the enemy's backline here. At that point, there's nothing really the enemy can do to get in to your units without either being on turn 1 or using extra actions like smite, like reposition, etc. to actually get in. And also, threat range in general just reduces your enemy's ability to go around the map and do stuff. Like, if our threat range was a bit smaller, if our threat range didn't cover, I don't know, for instance, this tile here, right? Then it would be pretty easy for an enemy to just sneak into this corner and maybe like break some things. Here, technically they still can using like Ash.
My orders?
For instance, they could teleport a unit in here, but they're kind of trapped in there. They can't like that. Basically, the idea is, like, if a unit wants to like break a catapult, sure they can. If they wanted to break our Joe's hindrance, that is covered by so much threat range that they'd have to go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tiles in, and then 5 tiles back out if they wanted to get back out. That's what threat is doing. It's protecting your units from essentially how far in an enemy can go. So, like, overlap is your protection. By the way, let's tie these back to the concepts of the threats we were targeting before. Overlap is your protection against tanks. Threat is your protection, part of your protection, against teams that want to set up on you, Gale Force teams, that sort of thing. The final thing you want to consider is reach. Reach, as a concept, is kind of similar to threat, in that it's how far your units can go, but reach is a bit further than just this area here. Reach is more about once your team is activated, like say
over here? Close your eyes.
Let's set up here. It'll take a little bit. Say I activate the team by first breaking this horse, mana, running back, and turn 4. Now I'm gonna really activate the team
over
like
here?
some kind of almond. Run away.
Why not? Yeah.
Okay, and we're hiding back
protect you.
here. Now for reach, let me demonstrate for reach. For reach is how far your team can go after it's been woken up. And reach, like I said, threat range is your counter to Gale Force strats that want to get in, strats that want to set up. Threat here, reach is your counter to strats that hit and run. And as you can see, this team's reach isn't perfect. We've got at least one tile of reach beyond our threat, but as you can see, if the team backs away like this, that's more or less the limit of it. We don't have any more than that, which is fine. It's a weakness of the team, for sure. If an opponent uses it, then the team as it's laid out now is a lot easier to break than it was when it was all set up top here. But those are three things that you really want to maximize out of your team's positioning. So, like, to give you another example, a cav line, a classic cav line. I don't think I have one in my list of teams here, but the strength of the cav line is threat and reach, right? A cav line threatens pretty much the entire map, and it can reach pretty much the entire map if it's hid and run from, so long as it has a dancer that can keep up with your cav units, right? Its failure is overlap. And the other thing to consider as well when building that sort of team in general is that if your team threatens the back line, that threat is only really effective after turn 1, because turn 1 has both the safety fence and also units start on that line in turn 1. So if they want to get in on that first turn, they're closer. They don't need to have ended turn within range for turn 4, right? But yeah, cav lines, strong threat, strong reach, poor overlap, which is why the other problem that cav lines face generally is fast save tanks, or just tanks in general, who can stand there and protect their entire team from your cav units, because you can't really overlap to get those kills with the specific unit that you have to kill whatever's tanking, right? And well, that's the positioning of the units kind of covered, but then what's up with the buildings? Well, I'm going to be honest. Most of your buildings don't matter. Or well, they kind of matter, but they don't really matter. First off, let's talk about the decorative buildings. You'll notice mine are all the way down here. Why are they down here? Well, the reason for that is, one, I don't want them up here. I don't want them like over... Oh, broke my neck there for a second. I don't want them all the way up here, because if they're in the way of my units, I can't even place one here. Ooh. If they're in the way like that, then they're blocking my units from moving. They're restricting my units' threat. They're restricting my units' reach as well if the enemy doesn't break them. Remember as well, you shouldn't rely on breakable objects for your positioning, because the enemy can break them. The enemy is the one who chooses whether those structures are broken or not, which works the other way as well. If your structure, for instance, is up here, and the enemy decides that actually they don't want to get hit by Saros, they'd rather only face your ranged units, well, they can just choose not to break it, stand right behind it, and then your ranged units can fire over it, your melee units can't. So, lo and behold, they've split your team up like that. They're getting to choose the encounters they want. So I tend to put my structures in a place where they do not get in the way of my units. They are far enough away from my team that they are not blocking my movement, and they are at the very edge of my range or even further away, so that again, they are not preventing my units from getting kills that they could otherwise have got. The only exception to this is the catapult. The reason the catapult is there is because of this, the bolt tower. If you've got a team like mine where Ardent and especially Ascendant Fjorm have troubles doing their job if they get hit by bolt tower, well, okay, you can't really protect against bolt tower perfectly, because unless you have an absurd amount of doomers on your team, wherever your units are, there are 3 different lanes, for instance, that Arden can get hit by Bolt Tower, and people will run Bolt Towers in all of those lanes. So even best case scenario, if you're thinking of just the middle lanes, where are the most common Bolt Tower spots, you're still looking at a 50-50 with a catapult. Okay. But yeah, most buildings, your decorative buildings, put them out of the way. They're very useful for slowing the enemy team down in getting to your team. So I've got them in these rows here to try and stop people from hitting Ascendant Fjorm turn 1 before her Hardy Fighter goes up. The idea being you have to break a building, or there's no building in this row because the trees are there. But I do still have a trap to try and dissuade people from going that way as well. Traps, likewise, traps don't really stop opponents anymore because things like Disarm Trap exists, things like Yuri exists. They do, however, slow opponents down. So what you want to do with your traps is put them in places where ideally you want to delay your opponents from going through those places. So a great place to put traps is right next to your team if you're worried about strategies for getting right up close to your team. If those traps are covered by your threat, for instance, it's very difficult for an opponent to test that trap without wasting a turn. They've got to go all the way to the trap, test it, and then run away again, because if it is a real trap, then they'll have lost that action, right? Or here, what these traps are actually doing, I'm not so worried about people attacking my team because I've got Arden and Fjorm there protecting them. I am worried about people attacking my catapult. So the job of these traps is to slow down, again, because that's what traps are best for, is to delay enemy units from getting to that catapult, because if their bolt tower's here and they want that catapult to not destroy it, they have to beat that catapult turn 1. Now, okay, a good player still can break that catapult. There's really nothing I can do about that. But that's the basis of the trap placement here. There are a couple of exceptions. These buildings here, especially the Duo's Hindrance, you want to put your Duo's Hindrance somewhere where it is not getting hit ever. And a lot of people will tell you this about your pots too. With pots, it's less of an issue. Like, if you've got somewhere good where you can hide your pots, great. But if this space wasn't here, for instance, all the way down at the bottom of the map where the enemy can hit them is still fine. Like, your pots, if you can stop the enemy from getting to your pots, that's great, because that's another thing that might make them surrender if they didn't otherwise surrender. But you'd rather your units be safe than your pots be safe, is my idea. And the other thing I say, your important buildings, your hindrance, your healing tower, I like to put them, if possible, not in the 6 or 1 lines, these 2 lines on the end here, because that's where a lot of people tend to run catapults for the express purpose of trying to snipe a Duo's Hindrance. Now, to be fair, that's still a 50-50, and there's only a few people who run that strategy, so having a Duo's Hindrance in the 6 line or the 1 line is fine. It's better to have it in the 6 line or the 1 line than to have it be somewhere like here where it's easy to snipe it, right? But if you can have it be difficult to snipe, like back here where you can't really get to, and out of the 6 or 1 lines, then that's even better, right? So those are the basics, and then the final step. We've covered unit choice, we've covered unit positioning. The last thing I do with my defense teams is iterate. Because like, sure, you've put the best of your planning into this team, you've built it however you can, right? You've considered all of what you think are the meta threats, both offensively and defensively, like the player phase units, the enemy phase units. But the best laid plans do not survive contact with the enemy. There are going to be people out there using strategies that you did not expect. There are going to be builds for common units that, although you expected those units to be used, you didn't expect that build. And there's going to be just errors you've made in your unit choice and your positioning. So, the final step is whenever I run into a team that has beaten my defense in any way, I look at it and I go, could I have won that match? If I built my team differently, could I have won that match? Like, was I a few points of attack or defense off that I could maybe make up through a C slot somewhere, or changing some skill? Is there a unit that I've just completely overlooked that I'll need to change? Like, if it's a tank, do I need to change one of my tank killing units to cover that? That sort of thing is what I mean by iteration. And one of the things I like about the YouTube channel I've got going on here is that I've got a log of that. You look back to the start of the channel even, and you've got each week a slightly different defense team from the last, because whatever happened the previous week, I went, how can I beat that? And made changes appropriately. And when you're making these changes, one thing to remember is, like, not to sacrifice, like, your big matchups in order to go for some small matchup that beat you. Like, if you got beaten by a really weird, Winter Cecilia build, that doesn't mean you should sacrifice your Brave Hector matchup to kill that specific Winter Cecilia, because you will see Brave Hectors every week. You probably won't see Winter Cecilias every week. But if you can find a way to sneak in a way to kill that Winter Cecilia without giving up all the matchups that you've already got, then do that. And similarly, if you're having to choose between, like, one matchup and another, and you just can't find a way to cover both, and they're like rarish matchups, because of course you want to cover all your big, important, everyone runs these matchups, then I just go on which one I think is more likely to show up, or which one I just don't like more. Honestly. But yeah, iteration. Even if I go sideways, you can see various. This is a slightly older of my teams back when I used Marianne. This is a slightly older of my teams back when I was using different positioning. Here's the team I had before 7th slot units existed. That was Dark. And the Astra Animus version of that team as well. I've still got them around. 7th slot units, but before saves existed. Every time something changes, either in the metagame or just something that had already existed but I didn't realize I needed to counter, I've made a slightly different layout to answer that. And so that's where we are. The final stage of making a really strong defense team is every week coming back to it and saying, can I make this better? And that's basically the long and short of it. Oh, Jesus, how long has it been? That's the long and long of it. I made it very long. Sure, anyway. That's how I build my defense teams in, like, kind of general terms that are applicable to whatever you're building. Keep those principles in mind. And if you've got any more specific questions, here's where we get into the fun part. How to sign up for defense doctoring. I've got a Google Forms in the description. And fill it in. I'll ask you what your name is, if you want me to share your name, or if you want to remain anonymous for some reason. Include evidence. Well, calling it evidence sounds a bit like you're in jail or something. You're not in jail, you're at the doctor's, but like show me what the problem is. Pictures are great, videos are great. If you can just somehow like demonstrate what specifically you want me to solve. And I've also got Wordsfair, so you can use your words as well to tell me things. And just send it off to me, and at some point I'll take a look at it, and it'll show up in a YouTube video here, hopefully, where I'll give my take on how to fix your problems. Slight caveat. One, again, I've said this before, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have one really good defense team. This doesn't mean I can make more really good defense teams out of nowhere. This defense team, as I just said, iteration. This has been iterated on for years at this point. Years and years. Any team or any ideas I give you are simply going to be one step of iteration. They're going to be, this is the problem you've come to me with, here's how I would maybe consider solving it. It's not going to stack up to years of iteration unless you come back every week. But at that point, if you're doing this every week, maybe try thinking about it for yourself a bit as well. And then thing two, I would appreciate it if you came to me with a specific problem. Like, if you say to me, Penrost, my defense sucks, build me a new one, there's only so far I can really go with that. I mean, I might be able to bring you up something good, but again, it'll be a completely fresh, untested defense, right? It might work for you, it might not. I can't really give any guarantees. And it might not be the best solution for you either, because I don't know your full circumstances. I'm just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, right? If you come to me with a problem like, here's one specific matchup that I'm having an issue with, like maybe, how do I kill Brave Edelgard with these units, right? That sort of thing I can approach way more easily. Or the one I can maybe fix best, because I'm the only person, well, no, there are other people who know this, but I'm one of like a handful of people who've actually read the AI guide and memorized it in and out. Here's something I'm trying to do with my AI. It isn't working. Please help. I'm great at AI questions. Please ask me those any day of the week. But in any case, yeah, specific problems, and I'll try and answer them. And yeah, I look forward to seeing your defenses making things not all about me for once. Other things to note, thanks for watching. We're getting really close to 500 subscribers. Hitting 500 would be great, because YouTube hides a lot of really fun features behind 500 subscribers, most notably community posts. I love to be able to make community posts so that when I want to tell you something like this, I don't have to make a whole blooming video about it. And so if we could reach 500 subscribers, that would be great. Obviously, if you're already subscribed, you're doing your part. If you're not already subscribed, consider subscribing. I'm not going to force you to subscribe, because I cannot. I'm not the sort of person who can reach out of your computer screen and strangle you until you change your mind. I can try and convince you, of course, but it's not the same. Where was I? Oh yeah, subscribing, do it. And thank you for watching. Look forward to my future defense replays, and look forward to my doctoring. Have I mentioned that I'm not a real doctor? I'm not a real doctor. I don't even have a degree in Fire Emblem Heroes. I did engineering. Completely different. Thanks and goodbye.